can let me know.
I will.
So my name is Meredith. I've been a technologist for over 20 years. I began my career as a programmer. I'm currently in New York, upstate New York, on the East Coast of North America. It is 7:10 in the morning. The lands I'm on are originally from the Pesco tribe, which I have not been able to find much information about. In the US now, we acknowledge the original inhabitants of the land. I don't know if that's done in Europe. My ancestors, though, have come from Lithuania on my grandfather's side. So that's interesting. We're going to talk about what it means. You know, this is very important. We all come from someplace. We all sit somewhere. When we're writing software, when we're working on projects, when we're leading teams, we are embodied. Even though I am on Zoom right now, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on wherever you are. My children are walking back and forth as they're getting ready for school. And what do all of these experiences have to do with the feeling of writing software? So I'm gonna get started, but first I'm gonna tune in so we can all connect. I don't know if you can hear it with my earbud. So I already introduced myself. This is me. You know, I'm a human, also a programmer and a coach and a leader. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time talking about is quality. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's an engineer at Google. I said, I'm giving this talk. And he said, well, what is quality? Is it, you know, that your software just doesn't break when someone uses it? And I'm like, well, that's one thing. That's one experience of quality. But how many times are you working on a piece of software where your end user is another developer? Or if you're a coach and you're working with developers who are writing software, or you're a DevOps engineer or a DevOps leader, and you're working on a more developer experience. You know, quality is not always about an app or a web page working. There are many different nuances to what quality is. Where I work right now in corporate, you know, our management is always talking about quality. Everything needs to be of a high quality, and you know that can mean many different things. And what it means, what I find helpful is to remove the feeling of quality as a checkbox, right? Like quality as a test or a quality gate, and quality as a felt experience of what happens when you are working on something. What is the quality of that feeling? It can be a high quality, a low quality, beautiful, and what happens when we sort of focus on quality as an experience and not quality as a checkbox on your pipeline. Okay. So these, you know, are some, you know, what do you experience when you go outside? And like, what is the quality of the open air and the trees? This is a mudra, right? When you do some sort of body work, go for a run or stretch, what is the feeling of quality in your body? How does that change what you do next? And I had to put this in because the next thing I'm going to talk about is we're going to look at waterfall. We're going to look at waterfall, agile, and then sort of agile with this embodied quality. So this is beautiful. Agile, waterfall is not always, the waterfall method is maybe not as beautiful as the waterfall in real life. But we're going to take a quick look at that. So we're going to start off this talk. We're going to look at what does quality mean in waterfall and traditional agile. Where does this fall short? How can we rethink it? And we'll look at an example of how I've experienced this. Okay, so what is quality in waterfall? In waterfall, when I used to work, and I'd love to hear your comments and feedback. So waterfall methodology, right? Someone comes down, management says, okay, we're going to have this feature by Q4, and here are the specifications, and here team leaders go implement, right? It's like this very top-down way of working that Agile was in response to. So what is quality when you have that sort of method? And, I was thinking about this, and again, I'd love to hear what you think, but quality is really the quality of the requirements, right? How good are your requirements? And how well do the requirements actually match what some perceived end user wants or what the goal is? And that's like very difficult to get right, because people are always changing, technology is always changing, the world is always changing. It's very difficult to capture in one fell swoop what an end product should be, especially with all different sorts of people working together in a team environment. I'm in the experience of working to fulfill really rigid requirements feels very confining, right? So what does it feel like when someone, I don't know how many people here have worked in a waterfall environment, but I'd like you to sort of give some words of like, what does it feel like when someone gives you a 20, 50 page spec, for your team or for you, or maybe you're in leadership, and then you have to go and implement it. What does that feel like? For me, it feels very constricting. I'm not in a dialogue with my work. I don't feel a lot of flexibility. It feels very brittle, very prone to sort of, I feel like I can only get something wrong, right? And I think that one of these embodied feelings, these qualities come out when we work in that sort of waterfall way. We have products that are brittle. We have processes that are brittle. We have processes that don't feel like they've been in dialogue with anyone that made them. And there's a relationship between how it feels to work in this way and what the end result is. Right. So why would we want to do waterfall ever? Well, it seems maybe it's faster, right? I don't have to gather requirements. There's a perceived speed benefit, perhaps wrongly. Speed at what cost? Also, maybe there are some sort of tactical, strategic goals that people need to hit certain strategic goals for either earnings or other metrics. And again, also we have this tension between goals and metrics, right? So my leadership says we have a goal. We want to have this piece of software deployed to users by this date, rather than, we would like to see more people doing X, or we would like to see our software, the uptime, increased by X percent. As we've seen over the years, moving to a more agile method, we get benefits that we thought we could only get through waterfall. But there are still these sorts of mindsets. So what is quality in Agile? So this is like something that everyone here probably is super familiar with. I'm just gonna like cherry pick a few of my favorites because still, we get into a similar situation that we had with, and I can't see my clock. That's kind of annoying. Okay, we get into a similar situation that we had in waterfall, where the feeling of quality maybe is not what we want the experience of our work to be.
I will jump in just to read the comments
Okay,
in the
great.
chat. Yeah, so to the question, what does it feel like working in waterfall for you? We have answers like separation of thinkers and doers. It feels disappointing to some, and we need to do waterfall to have an illusion of control.
Oh, I love all those comments. And especially like that control, like what does it feel like when you're really trying to control yourself? That can be very uncomfortable. And then you stop hearing one another. It sort of has all of these other effects, like disappointment as well. There's no dialogue, it feels. That resonates with me. So one of the things I think about, like I'm sort of like very metrics oriented. So I feel like everything I see, I make everything about metrics, to my detriment perhaps. But when I think about Agile, I think about, when I think about what quality is in Agile, I think about, I'd like to hear what you all think. Like, what does quality mean in an Agile setting? I feel resilience. I feel Agile I feel like quality in an Agile setting is communication, but I also feel like it's about like rather than conforming to a set of requirements, it's about improving, always improving. So what are we improving? We're improving some sort of metric, whether that's, and whether that's cycle time or, whatever metrics your team has decided are the ones that we want to measure. And I'm really curious if you agree, disagree. I love disagreement. I'm always looking to get better and improve. I totally forget what this picture was, but it was it was very clever. I thought it was very clever when I selected it. Now I don't remember what my thinking was. Oh, well, maybe it will come to me. So I also think when I think about Agile, I think about patterns. So like I think of our ceremonies as patterns. I think of our artifacts as patterns. Test-driven development, definition of done. All of these are sort of like reusable patterns that we take with us from team to team, or even we're always sort of iterating on our patterns. And over here, I think I have this Sierpinski, this fractal self-similar piece. That's also a pattern, a repeating pattern. And so if Agile, if quality in Agile is about metrics, what are we using to support those? We're using these practices, but really they're patterns that we're sort of like weaving a carpet, rather than maybe in waterfall, we're just kind of, we're just kind of like running straight ahead. We're not creating any patterns. And then when I think, what is the feeling? I'm just gonna go back. It's like, what is the feeling when we are doing Agile? And Agile is like, can mean waterfall really, I feel always kind of means the same thing. But Agile, as you all have, as many of the sessions have been about, or is done in like 10,000 different ways, with 10,000 different feeling qualities. So we can be doing our stand-ups, we can be doing our ceremonies with sort of like very little embodiment or awareness of what we're doing. We're just going through the motions. And then that feeling, it feels disconnected for me when that happens, or it feels we have a lot of communication, but maybe there's a lot of tension in the communication. So we're interacting, but it's not easy flow. And then in sort of where I see the quality in Agile most, the feeling of embodiment most, is when everyone takes ownership of the Agile ceremonies and we iterate and everyone participates in our retros, and sort of we all are building the fractal, we're building the patterns together, we're expanding the patterns together. And that feels really good to me. I feel like it's a feeling of ownership, the feeling of collaboration. So that sort of is the spectrum that I see. And I really would love to hear your feelings. But some examples from my recent work experience has been, we'll do a retro after every sprint. And so we would, at first we're like, okay, we're going to take three suggestions from every retro, and we're going to try and implement them in our next sprint. And like, we were not able to do that. It was sort of very demoralizing when we'd have our next retro, and it was like, did we do what we said we were going to do? And we're like, no, we all felt a little bad about that. So we said to ourselves, okay, well, let's pick one, someone from the team said, well, let's pick one thing that we're going to do, instead of, and we all acknowledged, we acknowledged that sort of demoralized feeling. And that felt good, right? We're not trying to hide it. We're like, oh, we didn't do this. Well, what can we do? What can we do to feel to give ourselves some energy, right? That's like the whole goal of this whole process, that we have energy to do the work that we want to do. So someone from the team said, well, let's just pick one. And that was that we were able to do that. And that is an example of taking ownership, of being flexible with our patterns. And I'm really proud of that. So I'd really be curious to hear sort of any experience that you have had. When I think of Agile, I think of communication versus process. Sort of on the less feeling side, it's all about process, right? We're going through the motions. But when we're having a high quality experience, then we're doing a lot of communication. I think about Agile as good code versus a lot of documentation. So, and communication around your code, good comments on PRs, small pieces of code. That's part of that communication versus process. And then I also think of continuous improvement. So continuous feedback, continuous improvement, and also real honesty and transparency that gives us. So the good feeling comes from when we can say, okay, like this is what we're doing now. What do we need to do to make it better? And what does better mean? Like how do we do it to feel better so that we can produce better work or hit our goal, so we can do what we said we were going to do. Okay. I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of, since we're all Agile practitioners here. So I'd be curious if any of you.
We have one comment that says, okay, to the question, what does quality mean in Agile? The answer is responding to change.
Yeah, I love that. It is responding to change. So, integrating that feedback. And one of the things I think a lot about with this idea of embodied quality is how do we integrate the feedback, right? It can be a feedback from a user. It can be feedback from your pipeline. It can be feedback from one of your teammates or from leadership. And how do you integrate that? That for me is the feeling quality that we don't always pay attention to. All right, so I'm going to tell. So this is where I love to do like a little kind of like workshop thing. But since we are on Zoom, I can't do that. I'm just going to check on the time. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to tell a story about sort of this repo migration. I was originally going to tell a Terraform story, which is why I had this beautiful picture of Mars. But I'm going to tell a story, a very quick story about the feeling of migrating a repo with a team of 6 people. So I was working as a management consultant for this wonderful company called Contino, and we were a team, I think, of like 5 or 6. And we were in bed, we were on Zoom. It was during the pandemic, during the heights of the pandemic. And we were tasked with embedding in this company to migrate from one source code repository to another, to create a framework for doing this. So every day we would have our stand-ups, and we would have our meetings with our clients. And it was very difficult for us to get feedback from our end users. It was very difficult to have meetings, and we would continue on. The only thing that we really could sort of control was how were we, what did we, what we thought, what our last objective was from our meetings, and how we could sort of execute that within our group and control how we felt and control how we approached all this unknown information that we really could not, it was difficult to answer. So there was the actual like executable that we were building of writing a bunch of scripts to migrate all of these different pieces of, what kind of orchestration system do we want to build to handle the migration. And, but then there was also the sort of experience, a bunch of, while we were dealing with the pandemic. So, when people would come to stand up, some people wouldn't engage, or some people, weren't able, were always blocked, and how do we, what does that feel like? And what does that mean for someone to like continue feeling motivated to do the work? So a lot of, so I saw a lot about like, what does it mean to always feel a feeling of flow, and what can we do to unblock ourselves in the face of some sort of like external blocks, so that we can always feel that sort of like internal momentum. Because when we're blocked externally, oftentimes we feel that internal block. And so we continue, we would sort of work on different pieces that we knew in the end we would tie together. We did not sort of like work in a linear way. It was very much, like I say, driving in New York traffic, if any of you have done that, always trying to find a space where we could go. And then just continuously, those spaces sort of like open up an opportunity to it makes the system, it gives space to the system. And over time, we were able to engage with our client more and get feedback. And and sort of change anything that we had made assumptions on earlier. But we really had to try and prevent ourselves from being stuck in this way by always finding things that we could work on and tie together later. So I wanted to end with this idea of embodied quality. So, what does it feel like? So when I talk about like, what does it feel like when you do a retrospective with your team? Do you feel stressed out? Do you feel tension in your chest? Do you feel shortness of breath? Do you feel like a sense of like excitement? Like finally I can unload, all of my gripes about this horrible sprint. Like, what is that feeling? What do you feel like? And then what do you feel like when the retrospective is over? Does anyone have any comments?
Curious is one of the comments.
That's a great, I feel like if you always approach these experiences with curiosity, it's like the most open, it's hard for me to do, especially if I'm running a team. I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna get it now, But if I shift my experience to like, I'm curious, what do people think? That feels much better. Any other experiences, especially if you're doing a retrospective with a client, like I feel like definitely like a little clench sometimes. I'm like, oh God. But it's if I shift to curiosity, or if I just like open up, I do some breathing, I open my chest, I can bring in the comments more. Any other thoughts on what a retrospective feels like?
Our most prolific participant is Indra, but I would encourage everyone also to join in. Everybody has an opinion about retrospectives. Everybody has an opinion about ceremonies. Please share that.
Well, as long as I really encourage you to think about like, what does it feel like? Because like what it feels like is going to be what, like, quality is not the end result. It is the feeling that you have while you build, while you're doing what you're doing. And that's the whole point of this exercise. Like, what do grooming sessions feel like? Like for me, grooming sessions often feel like frustrating because I have like a very clear idea of what I want done, what story should be. And so I really need to like open myself up for other people. I have to like say, I feel like, okay, not, I don't know everything. I'm open, like, let me learn. That curiosity mindset. I have to kind of settle into myself. Sometimes I feel like one with the Jira board, and I think I have to feel one with like my location. I have to ground myself, put my feet on the floor. I am not the Jira board. I am Meredith. I'm a human sitting somewhere, and I'm working with all these other humans that are sitting in their places, and we're all communicating with some sort of board, but we are not the board. Does anyone? What do grooming sessions feel like? For anyone have? For me, like the greatest, like I love it when we're estimating points. And it's like everyone estimates the same point. Like I get a rush about that. I probably get a rush if there's difference, because then we can like hash it out and like I can be curious and learn. But it is interesting, like what excites you in these processes. Like I really love it when I come to a grooming session and someone has like really made like sort of like prepped stories well. Like I feel really sort of proud, and that's exciting for me. Does anyone have any comments on that?
No comments yet in the chat.
Okay.
But for me, grooming sessions, I get a very good feeling when the story points valuation change after discussion. So I really feel like we didn't do guesswork, but we actually did discuss why we're rating it this way.
that resonates with me as well. And I actually, for me, like story pointing is one of the most important parts, because that's like when the real discussion happens, like the real learning. And I've been on teams where it's like we really didn't spend a lot of time doing pointing, and it's a pattern for improving communication. But I totally feel that. So, I mean, what do stand-ups feel like? I feel like this is the most variable for me, especially like there's so many different ways that teams practice stand-ups. I've been doing a lot of stand-ups lately. I feel like I've been very good. I feel like my stand-ups are improving. They're all 15 minutes. So I feel like they're exactly what what happens when you're doing a stand-up on time. Like, what is that quality that I'm feeling? That people know that people are clear about what they're doing. That people know how to communicate if there is a problem, a block. That people are respectful of one another's time. I also feel like a good stand-up is like short. Also means that your team is right sized, and that everyone's getting valuable information. I remember going up to stand-ups and just like tuning out, right? Being very dissociated with the embodied feeling is like totally dissociated. I mean, if everyone's dissociated on your team, like checked out, then like what kind of projects are you going to be building? I mean, the feeling that you have when you're having these experiences is the feeling you bring to building whatever it is that we're building. And if it's disconnected, if it's unempathetic, then that's going to be the experience of interacting with users, of interacting with stakeholders. I mean, I know I have felt that myself when I have, these are experiences that I have had. Any other stand-up feelings? I mean, it's all about like, what does writing software, what is leading, if you're a leader, what does it feel like to lead? What do your one-on-ones feel like? Like there are times when I experience one-on-ones again, like sometimes curiosity, sometimes excitement, and sometimes like trepidations, like, oh no, I know this is not going well. Everyone's zoning out during stand-up. But what are your daily, whatever it is that your role is, like, what does it feel like when you're doing that role, as a fallout from all of these other feeling experiences? What does your body feel like, right? So emotional, but physical. We all, I feel like, there's a great, flow. It's not, flow is one thing, right? I know people have talked a lot about flow. It's like that feeling when you're just in the zone. But, there are all different kinds of ways of being in the zone. And like, is it in a connected and embodied way? Because you can be in the zone, you can be like kind of like zoned out. You're in the zone, you come out of the zone, and whatever whatever you zoned into is really not fitting in with the whole picture. So it's like, I feel like it's important to be in the zone, to be in flow, but it's like you're flowing with, Agile is about like connection. You're flowing with other people. So how can we be in flow together? And then, the final thing, like my friend, when I told him I was doing this talk, what is it, whatever you're doing, there is a user. It's a software user, or it's another team, or maybe it's a stakeholder, or maybe it's everyone has a user. I think of this line from Moby Dick by Herman Melville. And even the captain of a ship has to answer to somebody. And I always think about this. Everybody has, everyone has somebody. Everyone has someone that they're answering to, and whoever you're delivering to, what are they feeling? And, it's not, you can't control someone else's emotions, but that's information. And the whole point of this is that quality products feel good. That when we're doing these ceremonies in Agile, it's not just for the communication and the feedback and improving, making sure that we're actually building what people want. It's also like, how do we feel while we're doing everything? Because no one has, I really don't think that it's possible to make a wonderful product while you feel not wonderful. And even if it is, like, who wants to live like that? Like, that is just like that's just not, why do that? The whole lot, life is all of your moments. So, I was curious, has anyone ever thought about what it feels like when they're involved in these activities? Like, quality is the experience, not just the end result. I'm curious, what do you all think about that?
I think you got our participants really thinking deeply about this.
What do you feel? Give me one feeling. I don't even know where people are. Okay. So right now it's 7:50 a.m. and the sun, during this talk, the sun rose. And I think my posture is not very good. I'm kind of hunched over. I don't know why. I'm kind of sitting up. I feel a little bit better now. I'm looking, I see the leaves are changing where I am. They're all yellow. And the wind is blowing through the trees. It feels like a lot of movement. I'm gonna leave this talk and I'm gonna have a one-on-one with one of my direct reports. And I feel that feeling of openness that I feel when I look at the wind in the trees, and I'm like, that feels good to me. I want to bring that with me to my conversation. I want to be able to hear what he has to say and bring that into me and be changed by it. And I try to have no meeting Friday, but that's my one meeting. And I know I had this dream last night when I gave this talk that I was giving the talk on Friday morning and that no one would come because it was Friday morning and everyone had been sleeping in from partying the night before. But then I realized that it was actually the afternoon where you are. So that was my dream. That was how I came into this talk this morning. But I'm really curious if anyone, there are embodied practices that I encourage people to do while they're doing. I think I have this in one of my slides. So, some of the things I do to sort of encourage an embodied experience is before we start our meetings, we all take a minute, we settle in and we're quiet. And this is very uncomfortable, right? Everyone is no one has any time, at least where I am, where I work right now. But it's we're all going to be in a space together and we want to sync up. We want to, and train our hearts, like I did with my singing bowl. We're going to match up. So take a moment. And then just check in. Everyone, how do you feel? Get comfortable. Are you hunched over? Are you clenching your fists? Everyone just put your feet on the floor. I should have done this when I started my talk today. And then when we're talking, when we go through our stand-up or a 101, how's everyone feeling? I'm a little low energy today. I didn't sleep well last night. Or I'm feeling fantastic. I made the most delicious tea and I'm ready to go. And I'm like just full of ideas and I have a ton of energy. And just to say those things out loud, right? I'm really disappointed in what we did last week. We didn't, even if it's not a retrospective, to just express what the feeling is. And, this is, everyone can be a leader in this, right? And then there's the facilitator also has a role to setting the space. But these are some small things that we can do to start feeling, what does it feel like in what we're doing? And that is pretty much it. I mean, I would be curious if anyone starts thinking about this to let me know what, if they experience any changes in their team or their experience of what they're doing. Because this is something that I don't think we think about. I mean, I didn't think about it until recently. I'd be curious if other people, this is like, oh yeah, I think about this all the time. If that's who I'd like to hear of. Any final questions or thoughts?
We do have a comment. I'll just read it out. For me, the work is worthwhile doing as long as it is fulfilling through relationships and interactions and intrinsic curiosity. So I do like this approach of every aspect of the process creating the quality of the product.
Yeah, that resonates.
Now, we do not yet have questions in the QA, but okay. One question I wanted to ask was when we're talking about quality and the quality, understanding quality maybe differently, for example, or how to deal with when you and the team have different understandings of quality, or you and the team and the stakeholders have a different understanding of quality, for example. How to deal with that?
I mean, that happens all the time. Right? I mean, I experienced that the other day, right? Quality is my definition of done, is satisfied. But then quality for my boss is that, this is in this environment with this kind of data or something. And I think that there is this sort of like extrinsic. I would even say that those are we say we want things to be of a high quality, and I'd be curious what people think. But I think that those are that's part of our sort of agile process. How do we match what we're doing to all of these sort of expectations and desires of all of our stakeholders? And how do we just close that gap? But is that really like, how do we close that gap? I think that is, that's what it means to build product. But is the quality, I think that, that's the high quality, is like the continuous closing of those gaps.
I think the question is when the expectations of quality for the stakeholders are higher than your team's, that's one thing. That's just additional requirements, right?
But that's a disappointment.
What if it's the other way around? Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think that that's a lot of well, it's like, what can the team do? Like, why isn't it? I often feel that mismatched quality expectations is a lot about empathy. And how can I build greater empathy with my end user if they are expecting something that I'm not delivering? And how can I, we talk a lot about that, like how to think like your user. And one of the things that I've experienced is when these processes become very rote, you really start to like shut down your sort of field of vision, and you don't have that empathy. It's sort of like I need, it's hard to connect with your users and what their feeling of quality is. Now, say if I, you know, I as someone building a product, I have a higher notion. I want greater quality. I want a bunch of Cypress tests to test all of the scenarios for my end-to-end software development. Maybe my end user just like get this done quickly. I don't care. You know, that I think, you know, he, you know, my end user ideally would develop empathy for me, but that's also, I think, a communication. Like, and then I have to be communicating with my end user. You know, this is, you know, why I think this is important, and then maybe I need to figure out how I can, you know, satisfy their needs, but also satisfy my own expectations for quality. And I think like that's also, you know, because that doesn't feel good either, right? If you're not able to deliver because you're spending a lot of time doing, you know, quote unquote quality of work that is not, that your user doesn't appreciate or understand the value of. So, I mean, that's also empathy. Like, how can I communicate this to the user? Like, what are they feeling that I am not feeling? That maybe they can share my feeling, or I can share theirs.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers and for the food for thought for all of us. And
well, thank you very much. I'm really curious. Please reach out, anyone that has any thoughts on this.